Hi, Facebook Live, and welcome to this week's edition. We have a new series this week. It's called Elections and Voting, apropos to get out and vote. I am Kellie Davis, and I'm running for the Oceanside City Council District 3 seat. And we are here today with the etiquette expert herself, Elaine T. Swann. She is an El Camino High School graduate and an incredibly successful, talented human being. And I have adopted being a pirate from my husband, so I won't hold being a wildcat against her. I just saying. And this week, why I wanted to have Elaine Swann on the show, being the etiquette expert, is I wanted to run this campaign with a sense of decorum, to be able to navigate this world of elections with some proper dexterity, being able to hear from people, but also being able to respond. And if you haven't heard about Elaine Swann, let me just give you some of the things that she has done. She's been on the doctor, she's been on Dr. Oz, she's been on the local news stations. She has articles in the Huffington Post. She has articles in Inside Edition. There's just a whole slew of things that this talented, amazing woman has had and what she has done for the community. So I want to make sure that we talk about this woman. Her school is called the Swann School of Protocol, and all the information that she can have on how to go through an election season with some decorum. And I will also add that today there is a Zoom with Coast News that talks to the Encinitas mayoral candidates, and it's the city council about running a clean campaign. So I think this is also apropos, and that you can look on Facebook and you can go ahead and log on to this event. So with Elaine's corporate training, some of the things she covers in her corporate training is managing diversity, closing the racial gap, the anti-racism movement. And today we're specifically going to hone in on her workshop that talks about beyond lip service, meaningful conversations with impact. So without further ado, I want to welcome the phenomenal, the talented, the successful, the etiquette expert herself, Elaine T. Swann.
Hello, Kellie. You are so kind. Thank you so much for that wonderful, energetic introduction. I'm so glad to be here with you today. And I am so thrilled about the fact that you are leading the charge. You heard the call, and you are stepping up and running for City Council in District 3. We definitely need you. We need to hear your voice, and we will certainly need your leadership. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Elaine. And one of the first things that Venus and I did in our campaign, we joined Elaine Swann and her awesome etiquette experts with her at Swann School of Protocol and on their Beyond Lip Service training. And I got a lot out of it. And it was what I really felt most satisfied about was there is a resource. Sometimes people, and what they talked about on Beyond Lip Service, sometimes people just don't know. They don't know how to navigate these kinds of waters, especially in a climate like this when people are very hypersensitive. And it's important for us to be sensitive. And I really enjoyed that. And it had been always in my back of my mind. I said, I'm going to have Elaine Swann. I'm going to have Elaine Swann on the show. We finally got it together. She's incredibly busy as a spokeswoman for Zelle and a number of things that she does. And I want to say at the top of the show, in respect to Elaine and her business, this is not an endorsement. This is just a good friend talking to me about her campaign. So please understand that this is a conversation about how to navigate these waters. So I'm gonna just jump right in, Elaine.
Okay, very good.
And one of the things that I have experienced on the campaign, and Venus and I were talking about this earlier today, some of the questions, especially when it relates to Black Lives Matter, the questions itself, sometimes are a little troubling to me because I don't hold that kind of perspective and the intention from whence that question would come. So I have to navigate, do I correct the person or the organization that's asking the question, or do I just go ahead and answer it and then leave it as it is? And what I decided to do is be respectful, as my mother would teach me, and go ahead and answer the question, but still in the back of my head, I'm a little like, I don't know about it. So my question to you would be, is that how I should be doing it? And can I do it a little bit better? Because a lot of the questions I get for Black Lives Matter is in relation to police brutality, which is definitely a strong part of it, but it's also talking about the beliefs, the attitudes, the perspectives that attribute to that perspective that then causes the police brutality and some of the things that have gone on in our society. So what would be your recommendation for someone like me?
Yeah, my recommendation to you, Kellie, is to utilize, to seize the moment. And when I say seize the moment, I mean, when someone asks you a question, that means that they're open to hearing what you have to say. And so it's in this instance that you should take that opportunity to dispel some of those myths, and then also, provide an actual answer to the question. Yes, we do recognize that many individuals feel as though Black Lives Matter only has to do with police brutality, and people that I just spoke with someone the other day who said, I had never even heard of it until the riots that just took place recently, and I don't understand. And she was kind of diving into it. But this is the one time where we do have a captive audience. And I do think you should take advantage of that moment. And with all love and grace that I know that you possess and you're able to share, I do believe you should take a moment to educate and to illuminate the true issues that we're dealing with, and then answer the actual question. I think it's important for us to do this so that this way, as time goes on, we're able to really illuminate some of the things that we're experiencing. For example, today, right now, in 2020, I went to the 7-Eleven just a couple of weeks ago to get a beverage late at, everything else was closed at night. I went to go get some sodas because we were doing popcorn and soda at the house and so forth. And we had one of my young nephews with me, young man, and we went into the 7-Eleven together. I went to the beverage aisle and was looking, and the person who was working at the store walked to the end of the aisle, stood there, crossed his arms, and watched as I scanned the refrigerated section to find the sodas that we were looking for, and in a very defiant way. And I know what that means, because as a Black woman, it's not surprising to me to be racially profiled. It's part of my daily life, right? This is something that happens to me regularly. Well, I had two choices in that instance. I know who I am, and I know the efforts that I have as a businesswoman and the impact that I have on the community. So I could have gotten on a soapbox and questioned the man with all dignity and grace and so forth, and told him, how he made me feel in doing that. Or I could just pay for my stuff and go home, because I know as a Black woman, if he would have felt any sort of confrontation from me, he could have called the police, and then you never know who's going to show up in that particular instance and what their implicit bias would be. So because I want to make it home, and I don't want to go through, being accosted by the, police and have it turn into this ugly incident, I just walked away, paid for my thing, and went on home. Now, that's something that we go back home as Black women, and we mention that to our family members, and we keep it in the home, and that's it. Typically our coworkers, our friends, our colleagues who are not people of color, they have no idea what we go through. So when we seize the moment to maybe share a story of something that's impacted our own personal lives, or maybe someone that's a loved one that's impacted their life, when we share those stories and we share with them that this is not just what you see as far as the police brutality is concerned, but this Black Lives Matter movement is really us as Black people crying out and saying, hey, we matter. We want you to treat us with dignity. We want to be treated with respect. We want you to recognize that that we matter in this instance, and that there are people who are treating us unfairly. And it's not just the police, it's the regular proprietor at the store. It's the person who, doesn't, give me service, it's stellar service because of the color of my skin. I'm judged before you even hear me speak because of the color of my skin. And so it's sharing these very deep personal stories because we have that captive audience that I think is going to be that is very remarkable in terms of this opportunity for us to take right now. So share your story, dig a little deeper, illuminate the problem, and then answer the question.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. And I will also say that sometimes, this is why I wanted to have this discussion here, oftentimes we're given a minute. It's generous, we're giving 2 minutes to speak about, unpack and talk about an issue that is beyond just a minute or two, because it has to do with the historical, it has to do with systemic racism. And until you kind of break down some of that into contextualize, then you ask me this question, I haven't even brought the whole meat to then express that. And
so here's what I would recommend then. I would recommend you, because we've been Black all our lives, right? And you've got lots of stories to pull from, whether it's something from yourself or a family member. Maybe it's as simple as sharing something that happened with, our husband, our brothers, or so on and so forth. But I would say to pick, in this particular instance for yourself, because your answer has to be short, my recommendation is to think about 3 poignant stories that you can tell and how you can kind of shorten them down and deliver it in a very succinct manner. So that when you're asked the question and maybe somebody is off and they don't quite see eye to eye, or they're missing the point, you can pull from your treasure trove of information, right? You've made it down, you've practiced, and you've been able to say, hey, I can tell this story in just a few moments, and share that story in that instance, and then answer the question. So that way you do pack it into a very short amount of time.
I appreciate that. And I will also tell you just one other little troubling thing, or I won't say troubling, offer a concern of mine. This, I don't know if it was the last forum, but again, the infamous Black Lives Matter. And I have to make sure that my face, because you're on now, it's Zoom, you're in the gallery view. And so when I hear it, hopefully my eye roll did not register. And I'm trying to make sure that my face is okay. We get the question. And one of the candidates in District 3 begins to, I spoke, and then he speaks after me, and he gives misinformation about this, what I'm feeling, again, my perspective, my belief, some misinformation, but this information is actually factual. And he talked about the violence that this movement has been a part of, and how there's violence. He doesn't want the writing and all this. And I'm thinking about, that's not accurate. So it's also part of the answers that some of the other candidates are getting. And I'm like, okay, I have what I'm going to say, but they just said something that is not accurate. So what I did do on the following question, which my answer was going to be very simple, is where I was at on where I stood on one of the measures. I then circled back around to what this comment was. And I want to say here that what I didn't provide was, I don't know if you know Bliss Tea and Treats here in Oceanside. It's a Black-owned business. And they had vandalism because they had the BLM, Black Lives Matter, in their window. And it was done by, it happened to be a gentleman that was white. And, he's already, I think he's serving, I think it's a year in jail or something like that. So they've already processed it. But the one incident that seems to have happened here in Oceanside was against the movement, and that the movement has been very positive. And I actually have a wonderful friend of mine who's been documenting this through film. Have seen any violence on it. So again, it becomes this sort of rhetoric that's going on in society. And I really want to tell you, Elaine, one of the struggles that I have, I don't want to become part of the noise. And Venus is going to share in a second what she found, what they were talking about in their conflict negotiations class. And she illuminated the kind of troubling area for Black women that we want to speak out, but then we're that chick now. We're belligerent, we're hostile. How come you always ask those questions? And why are you saying this? And so there's two things. One, you want to correct them, and two, you don't want to be part of the noise, and you don't want to be dismissed. And I try as much as I can to be as neutral and as friendly as possible. But is there anything that I can do to make them understand that I'm not being combative, but this needs to be addressed?
So my recommendation is to be, one or the other. I would say, be truthful and definitely be yourself and speak your truth. Of course, the tone we use. If we look at Kamala Harris, that's running for vice president, she very, politely said, "I'm speaking. I'm speaking." So I'm going to finish my thought right now. We can easily do that. We cannot. Whenever we say anything in life, whatever comes out of our mouth, the only thing that we can control is how we say it. And what we say and the manner in which we say it. That's the only thing we can control, right? Then people make their assessment of who you are and what you've said and so on and so forth, and we have no control over that. So the key is to get your message out, and in your own heart and in your own mind, make sure that you're paying attention to the tone in which you speak, so that you are not, so that you are putting forth your best effort to speak respectfully to whomever is listening, right? And then also be mindful of what you say, meaning the words that you choose to say. And then that's it, because we cannot control how people receive what we say. We cannot control, what their assumption will be of us after we have shared that information. So we can't follow that along, because we will end up trying to appease everyone. So try not to be so neutral. Instead, be nurturing in your speech, and be thoughtful and compassionate towards and considerate towards other, but also very truthful to yourself. I think I talk about this in my book, Let Crazy Be Crazy. I say, you can literally say anything to anyone. It just depends on how you say it and what you say. So if I say to you, for example, and I'm just going to use this is one of the examples that I use in my book, where maybe you're talking to a coworker who, has bad underarm, odor. You can go to them and you can say, you may not know this, but I noticed there's a bit of an odor that you have each day around the same time. I'm not quite sure if it's a medication you might be on, or maybe something's not mixing well with your body type or what have you, but I do want to make sure to let you know this, so this way you're aware of it, and I want to support you. I just told you that you stink, right? Okay. I just told you that you stink, but there's the way you can say it. Now, that person can either walk away and say, she just told me I stink, or they can walk away and say, well, she told me I stink, but she did give me a couple of options on alternatives. So let me kind of look into this and see what it is. But the bottom line is, you got to tell people that they stink. And so there's a way that you can do it.
I appreciate that. And getting back to your book, Let Crazy Be Crazy, and I will not refer to anyone on these Facebook threads as crazy, but the idea is that you allow people to be who they are, and you are who you are. And if their perspective is not in alignment with what you feel is your space, or if you feel, you let them have that space and you honor that space and you move on. I will say thank you for bringing up your book, Let Crazy Be Crazy, because even on the Facebook threads, and as you know, in being in communication for as long as you have, the way people are when you show up virtually or in person, you're right there, you're in your face, so you say these things. But when you're online, or if it's a text, it is, or if it's, it's a little bit different, because it seems like they have a little bit more well, now I can really get loose, you know, and say what I have to say. And on Facebook recently, I had an incident where they mentioned something that I commented on dealing with social equity and environmental justice, which is really just about hearing from the people. That's what we're supposed to do. I see myself as a servant leader, so I'm always going back to the people. Well, apparently there's some people are not, they kind of like the way things have been going. As troubling as the way things are, they still want to do things the same way because they feel that it's safe. And on this particular thread, someone basically said, well, what I am proposing will never work. It hasn't worked, it won't work, what you're talking about, and gave me a bunch of labels. And what I did, Elaine, I let it go.
That's right. You did the right thing, honey, because that particular person, their mind is not going to be changed, period. They've already made up their mind, which brings me to one key point I want you to definitely take away from this, is keep in mind that in these instances where you do have your platform and maybe you're being interviewed or you're answering questions and so on and so forth, your goal in that moment is not to try to change the person's mind. Your goal is to utilize your words to make history and memory in that person's mind. That's all you're trying to do, is leave history in their mind. When we speak, whatever we say becomes part of a person's history. It becomes part of their memory. And all you want to do is get that information out and do so in a dignified and respectful manner so that the history, the memory that you leave with them, they will later be able to ponder on it so that they can either receive it or reject it. But in that instance, the effort that you're putting into what you're saying is not to change their mind in that instance. It is only to leave it there and then allow it to simmer and go on its way. So then when you do that, right, you don't spend all of the power that you have and the energy that you have trying to convince that person otherwise. Your thing is to get the words out in the atmosphere, not only for the person whom you're speaking to, but also for those who are listening.
Well, thank you for that. And one of the things that I like to give while I'm campaigning are resources. And I mentioned several of the programs that you have listed under. By the way, Venus is still with us. She just texted me and said, I'm still with you, but my computer froze. So Venus, if you're listening, make sure that you put Elaine Swann's School of Protocol in the comments area.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, because I specifically want to talk about the corporate training now.
Sure.
I listed some of the programs that you offered. If you want to list them again in your own words, great. But I wanted to also say that beyond lip service, that meaningful conversations, that I thought that was well done. I received some wonderful information. They said they took the HELP as an acronym: hear, educate, leap in, and keep it phone, keep it charged. I think it was just dealing with being able to record instances. So if you could just spend a little time, talk about your corporate training and how giving people useful, practical information instead of someone just going off about this incident, that you could actually go to the Swann School of Protocol and receive wonderful information, if you could.
Sure, yeah. So here at the Swann School of Protocol, we're working with lots of our partners, our corporate partners, to help them navigate these challenging times. Right now, between there's a few different levels. Number one, there's the employee, the peer-to-peer relationship, where we're hearing all of these things taking place, we're watching the news, and then employees somehow have to come back to work and dwell together in harmony and in peace. And so we are working with corporations and organizations and businesses to help give their employees the tools to have meaningful conversations with one another, to really have that listening ear and go back and forth with one another from a perspective of of humanity. I think it's so important for us to do this. And so it's really been great to work with them, to give them the tools to have these very necessary conversations, whether it's sitting around the water cooler or something that's very formal where, you know, they're engaging in a actual thoughtful discussion about race in our country and how people are impacted. One of the other things that we're doing is we're working with management in organizations to help them identify some of those weak spots that they might have, and point them in the right direction to get tools. Maybe they might find that, you know, it could be everything from not just hiring people of color and making sure they're on staff, but really looking and seeing, you know, what their vendors, if they have vendors, whether they're graphic artists or maybe supply companies or things like that, that are companies of color that are run by you know, Black and brown people, just looking and seeing, are there any areas that they can give back aside from just talking about it and saying we want to support, but really supporting to help Black businesses. Because Black people, you know, we're not looking for a handout, we're looking for opportunity. And so getting in the door and having that conversation, having that opportunity to present a proposal to a company for our cleaning service, or either for our graphic design service, or for supplies that we might supply to, you know, different organizations. So we're helping organizations look at those spaces where they can find talent, and so whether it's their employees or the vendors that they're working with, we're helping them to find those little holes. And then there's another area that we help management, and this is in the space of making sure that for the people that do work for them, that they're inclusive. And inclusive doesn't mean just hiring someone who is Black or brown, but also including them, making sure that when you go around the office and you do that little tap on the shoulder and say, come over here, I want you to meet this really great, you know, new client or this really big client of ours, that you're tapping on the shoulder of the Black or the brown person and including them in those types of meetings and lunches and things like that. It's those relationships in the workplace to where people are really feeling included. When they're sitting down, are you, you know, looking to that person who's Black or brown and asking for their opinion, and really opening the door and opening the floor for them to share their thoughts and their feelings and their ideas, and taking into consideration anything they feel like they can offer to the company. So we're doing kind of a nice, you know, 5-point check system to make sure that companies are engaging with folks this way. So that's two of the things. So one is with the peer-to-peer, the other one is with management. So that's what we're doing, and we're excited about doing this.
Well, I think that the Swann School of Protocol has really serviced the community in just in so many ways, but even bringing back the etiquette. It's like you think it never left, but there has been, with social media, some of the pleasantries and things have kind of gone along the wayside. I was raised by a Christian mother who was a very service-oriented woman, so who did everything she could do in her power to raise her daughter to be a lady. We could ask Pearl Ethel how that went. Love you, mommy. And I just want to say thank you for being in the forefront and also being an etiquette expert. I'm sure you get people like, well, why did you say this? And why did you do that? And to be able to have the sense of decorum that you have to navigate through this is one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to have, and also because you have just been incredibly supportive of me as a businesswoman going forth and getting my business together. So I want to thank you for that. And before we close out, I want to give just a little bit of a shout out to the ancestors. And it's my understanding that your mother has an award named after her. And if I could just take a moment just to recognize that. And could you please just share about this beautiful woman who has passed on, now also a Christian woman?
Oh, thank you, Kelly. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, my mom passed away just a couple of years ago, and I just received just an incredible text message over the weekend from her employer. They had their awards banquet for all of their employees, and they named the top award after my mom, which is the Betty Lee Hero Award. And it just really touched my heart, because when I went back and read the text message, she even included the fact that they now have their core training for all of their employees modeled after my mom. And there was a number of words from caring, integrity, love, kindness, Jesus. There was this six kind of stone sort of thing. And it was just really phenomenal. I mean, my mom is gone, and as you, just like your mom, you know, she taught me everything, and I am who I am because of her. And to see her memorialized in such a way really, really warms my heart and makes me know that, you know, she was here. You know, she was here. That she was here, and she left a mark on our world. And so I'm thankful for that, because she was such a humble woman. You know, I always wanted the world to know that she was here. So I'm glad that this kind of marks it in time that she was here.
And she was here, and it ties to the elections, and that is apropos to say, talk about leadership. It doesn't have to come from someone just running a campaign. I'm happy to be in this space. It comes from the Bettys of the communities, you know, it comes from those people, and that to also then in turn have her employer, because this is what it really has to do. Yes, you know, forget about race. It has to do with saying, I see you. It has to do with acknowledgement. Venus gave me a new word called sawubona, which in essence means that I see you, and I see all of those things that have happened in your past, your ancestors, and here you go. So Elaine T. Swann, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that story with your mom. May it be an encouragement to those who are watching this today. I ran for office, but you know what you can do right there in your space, at your job, in your household. You can be a servant leader for your community, for your household. So thank you for joining us today, Facebook Live, for elections and voting with the phenomenal Elaine T. Swann. Thank you for joining us, Venus Johnson, Elaine T. Swann, and we will be back tomorrow with our Voters Forward. Thank you.